going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Mullen. You're like, what does this kid have drawn up on the screen? Have you ever went laser bowling or cosmic bowling, whatever you want to call it? That's about what it looks like. But I'm going to show you something pretty interesting, so I hope you stick around. As always, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's just for entertainment purposes only, so let's be entertained. Alright, so I do have some Mullen videos in the past out there. It's not something that I'm actively watching. I do have it in my long-term account, and it's just sitting there in the portfolio. You know, we're either going to be right and Mullen's going to become something in the EV industry, or we're not going to be right. You know, there's only two options, really. But I do like what Mullen's trying to do, attempting to do, and let's see if they can hit their production and whatnot. But we'll worry about the fundamentals a little bit later. Right now, we're just looking for price discovery, what's happening in the meantime. Whenever we get to these uncharted areas, undiscovered territories, we don't really have a whole lot of TA that we can work with. We don't have a whole lot of supports, resistance lines that are coming into play. Everybody's just kind of guessing or sitting there waiting, watching, hoping, and they're like, poke it with a stick, make it do something. So what I did was I used a couple of indicators that maybe aren't too popular from the retail perspective, but I do like them a lot, and I'll tell you what they are. I'm using the Fibonacci circles, and I'm using the Gann fans. So with those two indicators combined, it gives us a little bit of something to work with whenever we get into these uncharted territories. And why is that? Well, the Fibonacci circles will actually, it's like dropping a rock in a pond. You know, you get those ripple effects, and they go in every direction. So we get some direction to the upside, we get some direction to the downside. We know whenever, you know, something could be coming up. So what I want to do is just show you briefly that it does have some weight behind it. We can look in the past and see that it does actually work. And then we can look to the future and see when could we possibly see something happen with Mullen. So what I'm looking at right here, and it does look a little bit crazy, and I apologize, it doesn't have to be this complicated. I just added the Gann fan because when we're trading in fractions of a penny or pennies a day, I want to know where those supports and resistance are in a little bit more real time than just using the Fibonacci circles on their own. So let's just look at the circles, for instance. You can see the rings, right? Hopefully you can see all of these rings on your screen. Whenever it hits these rings, something tends to happen. So you see a touch of the ring, you see it pop up to the Gann fan trend lines that are shooting out here, gets rejected, comes back down to the ring, makes its pop back up to the fan, gets rejected, comes back down to the ring, right? You see some action happen, gets a little hiccup at the fan, drops slightly below the fan, rides it, hits this ring, makes a nice pop back up. So whenever we're kind of watching the fans and the rings, we can see that there are instances whenever these come into play that actually have some sort of impact on the price action. Something happens there. It doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to be, you know, a push to the upside or a push to the downside. It just tells us that, hey, something could happen right around this ring time. So that's what we're looking at, and I want to show you how it's going to come into effect in the near future for us and what we can kind of expect. Now, if you're new to the channel, I talk upside and I talk downside because we're all adults if you're invested in the stock market, and we are mature enough to be able to have an open discussion whether it meets our current confirmation bias or not. That's never why I'm here. I'm just here to indicate price levels, what I'm watching, what you could be looking for in your own charts in case you're looking to make your entry, your DCA, or we're even looking to the upside and seeing what's going to happen. When is that option gamma going to come into effect? When can we possibly expect a move, you know, one way or the other, instead of what we have? I mean, it is moving, right? Just not in the direction that we want. So when is the next potential areas? So you can also add in your own trend lines. I'm just following this falling broadening wedge that we've been in for quite a while. But also I have my fans that are out as well, and you can see that you know, the trend line works as pretty good resistance areas and support areas, but whenever we fall out of there, that's whenever I fall back onto the fan lines. So let's look at what we have going on. You can see right here in our most recent fib circle, you saw that little pop up. So something does happen there. It doesn't always have to get crazy at the fib circles, but something does happen. We see that movement happen too often around these rings to disregard them. So right now, let's look at kind of time frames. Let's look downside. Let's look upside. Let's see what's going to happen. So right here, you can see will be our next fib circle that's going to come into play. Now, rough date approximately somewhere around the 28th of October. And depending on where we are, it could be somewhere out to the 2nd of November. So we got a little bit of a time frame that we can work with. That's what we like. We like to know, like, when could we expect something, right? When could we expect something out of the norm? So whenever you're in between these circles, that's whenever anything haywire could happen, right? You get some good news to drop, something happens, and you got the potential to make your nice moves before you would happen to get rejected by the curvature of the ring, or it has to rethink itself. So right here, we're kind of in no man's land. Like I said, we're setting new lows. We don't really know where the bottom is. We're just trying to figure it out, and we're trying to use some sort of indicator to help us come to a logical decision. So right now, what I am looking for, we'll talk downside. What I'm looking for is somewhere in the 22.5 to potentially all the way down here to 15 cents. So that's what we're looking at before we would either fall out of this fan line or before we would hit our ring and it makes some sort of adjustment, whether that wants to be a pop-up or a continued push down. We don't know. We just know that something's probably going to get a little bit shaky right around the rings. So that's why I'm looking for, those rough dates of October 28th to November 2nd for something to happen. Now, in the meantime, your upside, you have plenty of room here in between our trend line. We got our 50 cent, which is going to be a call strike, which is going to be tough to get that push above, but it could happen. It could, realistically, before you would come into your fan line that comes here and your fan line that comes here. So upside potential, I would say, before the ring could be as high as about 64 cents. Again, we have a couple of hindrances in our way. We're going to have our MA, we're going to have our trend line, we're going to have our 50 cent strike. So to get up there, it's going to take some work. Now, to our downside, we're not sitting too bad as far as if it wants to fall another 7 cents, it can. We can't stop it, but just be prepared for that as well before we hit this ring and see what wants to happen. Now, the further we get down, obviously, the greater the slingshot or the rebound effect could actually be whenever it all comes said and done. We are falling just a little bit out of our volume shelf, so we're going to see how many interested buyers are still right here in this area where we're falling below currently, which, until we see how that discovery works out, it could be an easier drop for that 5 to 7 cents, or it could find quite a bit of support because we don't have a whole lot of selling pressure that's happening right there either. So kind of a toss-up, right? 50-50. What's going to happen right here? It's at an interesting spot, in my opinion. Could it come down? Excuse me. Sorry. Could it come down just a little bit more and bounce off this fan? Yeah, it could. That'd be like about 2 cents, somewhere around the 21.44. So that's what I'm watching in the very near immediate future, is how is it going to respect this fan line that it's coming down on, and then how are we going to play out in this channel. So I haven't been doing Mullen updates consistently, but I will start just for at least the next week or two. We're going to watch and see how this all plays out and see if we do get that bounce, because as of right now, I can see a pretty decent upside potential that could be coming. We're just waiting. So earnings is not going to be until December, sometime probably late December, if that is correct. And we have some time before any of that comes out. So in the meantime, we're just watching for these TA indicators. We're watching for our supports, our resistance, and kind of a little bit of a timeline with these rings, because they give us a full circle. They show us what we're looking for to the downside when we have nothing to really look for as to what's happened in the past whenever prices have been this in this range. So I appreciate you guys coming back and watching another one. You're welcome to subscribe if you'd like so that you don't miss any of the updates. Like I said, I will try to do this more regularly for at least the next week or two and see if we get that positive movement going back to the upside. That's what we're waiting for. And right now we're just watching and waiting to see how it responds in the meantime. So I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, stay golden, people, and may your accounts stay green.